Three, two, one. Hey everyone, Harry Welchel here. Today we're going to be talking about how Michael went from $800 in monthly sales to over $9,000 in sales in about 2 months with his Graphite Mixed Media artwork. So, Mike, why don't I just turn it over to you? Can you just share a little bit about yourself and your background and what you do?
Yeah, so thanks, Harry. I'm happy to, it's great being with you. So I'm like a mid-career artist. I've been doing this for a while now and have some representation with 4 galleries across the US and 1 gallery here in Canada. And so I've been doing this, been in the art business now, doing this for about 20 years or 20 plus years. And I guess my sort of story is I'm sort of trying to take back my power from the galleries and try to start to sell my own work and develop my own connection with my collectors. And you know, as far as my work goes, you could kind of pigeonhole me into like black art. I do a lot of stuff about the African American experience, African Canadian experience, and you know, a lot of images that reflect that.
Very cool. Very cool. So yeah, like tell me a little bit more about that. Like how did you decide to get into art initially? And I'm also curious, like how did you decide to kind of focus on those subject matters and those themes?
Yeah, so I'm one of those fortunate people who found a passion at a very young age. And so drawing was something that I did when I was a kid and got the right kind of encouragement. Was able to go to an arts high school. And then decided to pursue that as a career in college and university. So went to an art school in college, and then you know after I got 3-4 years under my belt doing that, went out into the real world and started doing commercial art on one end and my fine art stuff on the other side, and always had my own business in the arts. And, you know, shortly after coming out of school and kind of getting my feet wet, I decided I always wanted to have an art business focusing on my fine art. And so that's how I got started, and I've just been doing it ever since.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. What like, so you knew at a young age you were interested in art. What drew you to it? Was it just the ability to be creative? Was it that it was like a meditative experience for you? Like what do you like about the actual act of creating your artwork?
It's a way in which, for me personally, I can process my own feelings and emotions. It's a way of learning and exploration. It's my spiritual space. That is my space where I really connect spiritually. And it's, for me, you know, I believe it's my purpose, but I'm also mostly just a vessel. And so that's what it's been for me. It's not just something that I do. It's more of art is a practice. It's a passion. It's a really strong passion for me. So it's a daily thing, and if I'm not actually making art, I'm thinking about making art. And if I don't make art, like even my wife will say, yeah, you're off. Like I can only go so long without actually making art, and I get miserable.
You get antsy.
I'm just not right. I'm not a very nice person to live with if I'm not making art.
And is it like, I'm so curious about you guys as artists. Like, so is it that you're like, I just have to get a pencil in my hand, I have to just draw something? Or is it like that some subject matter like strikes you and you're like, I've got to like put this, you know, person on paper or this subject on paper? Like, what is it for you?
Good question. I don't think it's one thing. I think it's a myriad of things, but it culminates in the fact that I have to be creative. Right. It's I guess a good way of explaining it is, you know, you have a way of expressing yourself that you're very comfortable with, and that's what you not just enjoy doing. I feel compelled to do it. Mm-hmm. So if I don't do it, it's like, it's actually depressing not doing it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes me think of like some people I know that they like are runners, and they'll run every single day, and it's like if they don't run, they're like totally out of shape. They're just like so anxious and stressed out.
Yeah, you're just not yourself. You're out of sync.
Yeah.
Right. So to me, it's like it's a daily thing, like a runner. It's a daily practice, and if you don't do it for a couple of days, you're not yourself.
Yeah, it affects your mindset and your mood and all those things.
Yeah, it affects all those things for sure.
Well, let me ask you this: like, what do you feel makes your style and the subject matter that you cover? What makes your art, your body of art, unique in your mind?
There's a few things that people have told me over the years. One, there's a photorealistic nature to my work that people always cite. Two, they say there's a spirituality about about the work that I do, and that's part of my art practice. Is my goal is to try to draw. This is going to sound weird, but this is actually my goal. I try to draw things that you can't see, meaning emotions, thoughts, feelings, atmospheres. That moment in time when you were a kid that gave you this particular feeling. I try to draw things that connect us as human beings. And most of those things are things that you can't actually purchase, buy, hold. These are, memories. You can't, those things are so powerful. And so I tap into that in myself, and I try to kind of move down that path and share those kind of things with folks and try to capture that, which is, it's not easy to do, but I try. I do my best. That's
so cool. Yeah, no, that really resonates with me. I haven't seen a ton of your work, but the stuff that I've seen, I think you're right on the money. Like the photorealism is definitely really striking. And then I think I saw one of your mixed media pieces recently on social media, and that like contrast between the photorealistic kind of black and white with the colors behind it. It's very cool.
Yeah, that's a new style that I've started. You started working on
share a little bit more about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that new body of work came about actually this year. Just before I started working with you, I started moving into trying to see how I could use color, large graphic shapes of color to kind of make that graphite pop and give it an extra punch. Prior to that, I was doing mostly just graphite. I did do some graphite drawings with a little bit of mixed media in terms of like watercolor. Mm-hmm. And now I've moved into working with graphite and then just really strong gouaches, using gouache, strong colors, and some really, shapes that really help to bring out the graphite and give it an extra punch. And so, yeah, I started doing that and started off doing a couple small pieces, and the response has been overwhelming, right? Every time I do a piece, people snap them up just like that. So you keep doing them, right? You keep going down that road and seeing what else you can explore using that connection that you've made with people.
Yeah, and one thing that comes to mind for me, I don't know if you did this intentionally, but hearing you talk about how there's a spiritual element to your art practice. I don't know if you're familiar with like Eastern European Eastern Orthodox like iconography, but like it almost, hearing you talk about the spiritual thing and then thinking back to that mixed media, I almost got like this kind of element of like an icon almost to some of your work. I don't know if that's something that you did consciously.
That's intentional. That's really intentional. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Just trying to communicate an African spirituality that, we that spirituality that we all carry in us. We're all spiritual on some level, but to reflect my own spirituality from my own culture and so forth, that's something that's really important to me.
That's awesome. Well, very cool, very cool. So let's talk about this. Let's go back to the beginning, like before we were working together. Just kind of tell me a little bit about, what were you doing in your art practice, the month or two before we were working together? What was things like then?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not unhappy with what my situation was. Just to give you a little bit of background, I used to be totally doing things on my own, doing a lot of art festivals and that kind of thing. And then when my wife and I decided to have a family, I couldn't be running around, all over the country, 2 countries, and doing, art for, 80 hours a week and stuff like that. So I decided to move my art practice into getting into galleries and allowing them to do all the legwork, which would allow me to just do my art, focus on my family, and go that route. Now that my children are a little bit older now, they're 10, they don't, and I have twins, by the way, so that played a role. And having twins, was overwhelming for us. So I really had to scale back the amount of traveling that I did and so forth. So now that they're 10 and they're older now, I'm realizing that, I have these great relationships with these galleries, but I'm giving away 30%. I'm giving away 40% in some deals that I have. And I want to start to take that power and shift the economics back in my favor. And, so, just phase out my relationship with galleries who aren't selling as much as I would like them to. So that's what I was doing prior to working with you. And right, when I stumbled across you, it was more of a situation where I was trying to decide what to do. I wanted to either change my website and create a situation where it was an e-commerce situation, or B, try to learn sort of the marketing end of the business and try to hire a marketer. To be honest, I wasn't interested in getting my hands that dirty in the marketing myself. My thing is, how can I get what I want, but still leave me as much time on the drawing table and as much time in the studio as possible? So that was my kind of dilemma: is how can I make more sales and still leave me doing what I do and just drawing and producing art as much as I can? So that was sort of the dilemma and where I was at a crossroads at that time.
How did it feel then? Was it confusing? Like, were you trying to do like kind of your own due diligence online and see what other people were saying? Like, what was it like to kind of try to discern what to do?
So there were a few things that I was looking at, to be honest. There was another company that I was looking at that did that kind of work, and I was saying, well, maybe I should go over there. But it didn't feel right to me because they were, it looked like they were pushing, artists getting into selling a lot of other products, phone cases, this, that, and I just didn't feel authentic to me. So that was one thing that I was looking at. Another thing I was looking at is, like I said, e-commerce, looking at Shopify, looking at Wix, looking at these other, platforms to kind of revamp my website. And then another thing was, well, maybe I should just go hire either, an art dealer or an art rep or someone who can take that spot for me and kind of push my work. But it was still, I'm still going to have to kick them up, 20% or whatever it is. So I was kind of in that stage of figuring out, what do I want to do? So I was kind of in the valley of decision, trying to take a look at these different options and figure out what was best for me.
Interesting. Yeah. And did you feel like you were making progress, or it was like, I don't know, I feel like the reason what I'm getting at is I feel like there's so many online free resources and they all can 1 minute convince you that's the right path, but then there's like missing links, or it's really easy to get confusing, I feel like, if that makes sense.
I wouldn't say that I was necessarily confused per se, but what I would say is, I knew that I wanted to use I knew that I wanted to leverage social media. I knew that I wanted to leverage the internet in order to make sales. So I knew that part. The question was, which direction would give me the best results?
going
was
that
the thing.
e-commerce route or the art rep or I see.
Exactly. Which one is going to give me the best long-term return for whatever it is that I'm going to have to do, whether that might be my own personal time, giving up my own personal time, or giving up a percentage to another professional that can actually take it and run with it. Like, what is going to give me the best return? So that's kind of where I was. I'm willing to invest. I wanted to reinvest in myself, but what is going to give me the best return, and what situation is going to be the best for me? So that's where I was trying to figure things out. Yeah.
Right. So that makes sense. So you knew social media was the constant, but like how to do it. What, when you were doing that and looking into the e-commerce route, what were you most frustrated by or like most skeptical by about that path of kind of going the merchandising low ticket route, if that makes sense?
Well, the challenge with all of that stuff is at the end of the day, you can, because I've had a website, I've done the whole thing, right? You can put up a beautiful website with all of the bells and whistles and have all that stuff. But at the end of the day, you still got to drive traffic to that site, and you still got to convert those folks who come to your site. And, to get a little bit technical, because I've been in the business for a while, like what's the conversion rate of that one sale? What is it going to cost me? Because it is a cost. And I felt like all of these providers, they offer great platforms, but what they don't do is they don't give you the infrastructure to drive traffic to your site. Right. So there's that one. Then if you go on Etsy or you go on these other platforms, well, now you're fighting against everybody else who's on that platform to actually get some traction and get noticed. And my particular work, my style of work, is not really your mainstream, down the middle, landscape kind of work. It is a very niche market. It has, lots of people are interested in it, but it's not a mainstream kind of work. So these are the things that these are the things that were really concerning to me is, I could do this stuff, but at the end of the day, that's the real hurdle for me. And that's the problem that ultimately I was trying to solve.
Yeah, no, I think you nailed it. Like with the e-commerce route, if you do your own store, there's a lot of platforms today that make it so easy to get the tech set up, but then they leave out like what are the actual metrics of the funnel of how much traffic do you need to drive to get the sale, and then like what are your unit economics? And if you actually knew that stuff and did the math, you just would be shocked as an artist how much traffic you need to send to make that viable. And then on the platform side, you're right. It's like any sort of additional traffic you get through a platform, you have that gain, but you lose out because you're really not differentiated at all. You're just like another commoditized artist next to all these other people. And you can't really differentiate in a really meaningful way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and the other challenge with that is if you're on one of these platforms that generally are not attracting your kind of collector, the chances of you making significant sales is extremely low, right? So that was the other problem is, are these platforms like Etsy or, for example, are they pulling the kind of collectors, my demographic? Because being in the business a while, I know what my demographic is. I know what my ideal collector is. I know them. I've met them. I've talked to them over the years. And if that platform is not pulling those folks, it's really not you're really not going to make a lot of sales. It's total disconnect. Yeah.
So let me ask you this: like, where did you first hear about me, and like, what sort of piqued your interest?
I first heard about you. It was on the internet. It was a YouTube. That was a YouTube. Here's what piqued my interest about you is. This is how I perceived it in the beginning. It's like, okay, he's talking about learning some fundamental principles about marketing. So I thought, okay, that piqued my interest because at the end of the day, that's really where the rubber meets the road. That's really what I'm going to need. It doesn't matter what you're selling, and it doesn't really even matter what circumstances you're in, understanding those fundamental principles is going to really help me. That's what I initially thought. So that's what piqued my curiosity in the beginning.
Yeah. So like versus people that maybe try to hook you in by saying, oh, like you got to use Instagram or you got to use LinkedIn. That's the only thing. Like there are people out there that make it all about the tech and like that being a silver bullet. But it was my emphasis on no, like there's just fundamental principles of communication that we need to work on.
That's it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That resonated with me. That resonated with me because ultimately what I had in my mind was, how do I recreate that gallery experience where I'm meeting someone in the gallery and we make that connection, and that's what sort of energizes the sale versus, a low ticket item energizing the sale or the tech energizing the sale. Yes. So that's where I made that initial connection because of that.
Very cool. That's really, really cool. So, I know we've only been working together for about 2 months, but you've still had a ton of wins since then. Can you just speak to at a high level a couple of the wins that you've had and some of the impact we've had so far?
Yeah. There's been a couple of the really high level wins that I am excited about are the new collectors that I've met cold on, and I'm just using Instagram. I'm only using Instagram. I said, listen, and from your advice, listen, let's just focus on one thing. And I feel like, let me just focus on Instagram. Let me get to know that cold, and let me get to really understand how to connect with people that way. I don't have a large following, but like maybe just 500 plus, but those 500 plus are engaged with me. So in meeting people cold on the internet, not ever meeting them before, I had never, it's very rare, maybe prior to working with you, maybe 2 or 3 times that I've done that. And it's always been in an instance where they saw my work somewhere else and then found me. These couple of instances, I'm talking about people who are just totally cold, which is new for me. To take them from one client, one new collector, met her cold, and she bought a piece from me for $700. Just a small graphite drawing. And then the next month, she turned around and purchased a piece from me for $3,000. Right, and just being able to.
What did she say about that second piece? You remember what she said? She was like,
"Oh well," she said, "I have to have it. I have to have it." we had a like a little studio call and a little studio tour, and we chatted for a bit, and it went so well. It was interesting when you make a connection with somebody. Things don't have to go perfect. Like I didn't tell her what the name of the piece was. I didn't, she kind of asked. She was kind of moving the conversation forward. And actually, when we finished the Zoom call, we ended the call, and I was like, I don't think I even told her what the name of the piece was. Like, and she said, I told her the price. It was $3,000. She said, "Oh, let me think about it. I've got to, work some things around my budget and stuff like that." And I said, "Well, I can work with you." And maybe half an hour, she texted me back, said, "I want it. I gotta have it. I gotta have it." So that was really great. I think and that's the thing that really is exciting for me at this point, is being able to take someone, not knowing them at all, and being able to develop a relationship with them, and they start off their collecting and have that progression really happen really, really rapidly. That's
my favorite win to hear from people like you, Michael, because it's like, it's almost like you unlock the superpower, because you realize that you can actually take total strangers and then turn them into collectors or clients, and do that with like predictability and doing it in a systematic way. And it's like your life has like the before you can do that and after you can do that. It is
so true. It is a huge deal, because prior to this, most of my sales have come from collectors who are repeat, right? We're already connected. We maybe met at a show or somewhere. They kind of know what to expect. And so now they feel comfortable coming online and purchasing from me. So I had that covered. And was able to do that pretty successfully. What I was not able to do is what I'm able to do now, and that is meeting somebody on the internet cold, developing that connection, developing that relationship, and getting those sales from that cold contact. So that's the game changer for me for sure.
And how many times do you feel like you've done that so far? A couple times?
It's been a couple of times, and then I have another one set up for tomorrow actually.
Nice.
Yep, tomorrow's Friday. So tomorrow I have another one that's another studio tour that started from a cold contact. We talked, we generated a rapport, and then I said, hey, why don't we jump on a Zoom and let's meet each other, right? Let's chat. And she's super excited. She wants to see, hey, I want to see this, and I want to see that, I want to see this. Okay, so let's just meet each other first. Yeah.
That's
so
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it's cool. It's like I feel like it's like once you do it once, then you get like some wind in your sails and some confidence. You're like, okay, if I can do it once, I can do it twice. If I can do it twice, I can do it 3 times. If I can do it 3 times, I can do it 5 times. And the next thing you know, you've got this momentum going. And it's like you're right at the beginning of that cusp, I think, of that momentum.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
So what else? Any sort of like other wins or insights or takeaways that have been especially valuable to you so far?
I think the other thing that's been valuable about working with you is the community. That's the other thing that's been valuable for me is it's a community that's very supportive, but for me, it's also like, okay, there's a group of folks that I'm accountable to, right? Like I got to show up when I'm supposed to show up. I gotta, there's certain things that I feel like I need to do. I'm a pretty disciplined guy, but that added community pressure, no one's pressuring you, but when you sign up for something and everybody's moving in a certain direction, you don't want to be left behind, right? Like you don't want to jump on a call and folks are talking about this aspect of things and you're like, wait, what's going on? So that aspect of what I call soft accountability. Right. No one is looking over your shoulder. No one is waving their finger at you if you don't do anything. But it's that soft accountability because you're a part of a community that's all moving in the same direction. We all have similar goals. We all want people to actually be successful. So you do feel, at least I do feel some level of responsibility to like, okay, there's certain things I got to get done this week. Like I got my list. This is what I got to do. And it helps you to stay focused. So I like that aspect of it. Yeah.
That's really cool. No, I haven't had anyone kind of put in that light. I love that term though, soft accountability. I think you nailed it. It's like you want to make everyone else proud, right? You want to do right by them. It's not like there's any sort of taskmaster like stressing you out or anything like that.
No, not at all. I mean, and of course, you come into something. At least for me, I'm motivated because, hey, I'm the type of person, if I'm going to spend my money and if it's not going to work, it's not going to be because I wasn't doing my due diligence and doing everything I need to do to make this work. I want it to work, but I'm not going to slack off and say, oh, well, it's because he wasn't focused. He wasn't doing what he needed to do. It's more about, I know what I need to do, but also there's this group of people that's there with me. And, they're inspiring me, and of course, in turn, I want to do the same thing. So it's like that soft accountability. It's like that. It's you want to be an encouragement to folks too, as well as they're an encouragement to you. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love it. And so, have you been getting that just from being in the group and chatting with people on social media, or have you been doing any accountability sessions at all as well?
As you know, my summers are free, so I literally have accountability sessions set up for next week, starting next week, and so we're gonna go after tap into that. But prior to these last 2 months, it's just been coming to the group meetings twice a week, being there, being present, asking questions, listening. I think that's another thing that's really great is hearing other folks and what they're going through. And hearing what you suggest them, and you're like, okay, well that'll work for me. I'll take that, and I'm going to do that, right? So the other aspect of it is there are always people ahead of you, and there are always people behind you. So you can kind of learn from the folks around you. So if there's folks that are ahead of you, they're like, oh, okay, that's what's coming up, or they're just ahead of me, so I need to do that, or I don't need to do that.
Yeah.
And also there are people behind you who maybe they've asked a question that you didn't think about, and it prompted a solution. You're like, that solution will work for me. I'm going to do that. And so I've been just in that way, learning a lot and getting a lot from those group chats that we get on where we're working out our problems together. And I can kind of hear everybody's thoughts and hear your thoughts and your suggestions and glean from that too. So that was it. That's big for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, and one other thing comes to mind for me with your story is like, I don't think you've fully, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you've like fully digested all of the training. Like you've really just kind of scratched the surface on that. So can you just speak to it at a high level a little bit about how, you don't have to master everything in order to get the wins that you've been seeing?
No, you don't have to master everything. And for me, it's like, okay, I took it upon myself to say, where am I weakest? And I'm going to laser focus in where I'm weakest. Where I'm weakest was, hey, these cold contacts, making connections on Instagram. How do you do that effectively? I remember one time we actually went through, I showed you what I said, right? And you gave me some very specific pointers. Okay, I took that back, right? I took that, I worked with that. And then that's how I believe I got to these cold clients, right? These cold conversations, right? So I really, so that's, for me, I was like, okay, there's some things I feel like I'm okay with, like the mindset and all that stuff. I feel like I'm good with that. But here's where I'm weakest. And so you can actually take the training and say, okay, let's focus on my weakest points. That's what I did. I said, let me shore up the weakest points in the area that I want success the most. And so I kind of had a list, and I said, okay, these are the 3 things that I really want to focus on. And I zeroed in on that in the training. And it's yielded results, right?
And just to add to that, I think what's good about the way you did it is that you didn't do that in isolation. Like I think you like came to me and we basically cross-referenced together and talked, and like you've always been in dialogue with me so I could help tailor things and help you out. And I think it's that combination that what led to you getting those quick wins, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's true. And pretty much every week, I'm on there every week. And pretty much almost every week I have questions or I have something to share, and we discuss. I'll say, hey Harry, what about this? What do you think about that? So it's not like I'm just doing my own thing. It's I have my own thoughts. I have areas that I want to work on, and I always say, hey, what do you think of this? Or, in the case where we looked at some of my chats, I said, hey, what do you think of this? I didn't really connect. This kind of fell off. What do you think I should do here? And we go through it, and then I'm really good at taking the feedback, and then, okay, let me give it a shot. Let me try it. Nice.
That's awesome. Well, what about this? Like, I'm curious, have any other areas of your life, maybe personally or professionally, have they improved at all beyond, some of these sales that you've been having?
I think for me, there was a little bit of underlying anxiety about how I'm going to solve this problem. Because I think for artists, at least I can speak for myself, is we typically abdicate all of that to other folks, right? And that's how I've been able to be successful to this point. That's the conventional way. You let the gallery owner deal with all of that. You produce the work. You show up to the opening, and you do your thing, and then you get your check, right? That's the way it happens. So there's always this underlying anxiety to say, okay, now I'm doing it. And there's
no one else responsible.
Right? Let's get, there's all these things that I got to think about now that I typically have chosen deliberately not to think about. And so having the group there, having you there, it helps to address those blind spots. It helps to address sort of that anxiety that you might have around, okay, well, I don't know what to do next. You can actually, hey, there's some place to go where you can ask what to do next. So there's never a real feeling like you're out there floating by yourself, right? And you don't have this understanding of any kind of direction, and nor do you have this feeling like, I don't know what to do. And I think that's a huge sort of weight off the back of my mind, because at the end of the day, when you're making your art, if you're in the business, eventually that art you're going to show it to folks. You're going to hang it up somewhere. You're going to put it on social media, and you're going to try to sell it. And if that's in the back of your mind, like, I don't know what I'm doing, that can affect your art practice as well, right? So that's kind of freed it up for me, and it left me space to not have to worry about that and really just focus in on my practice.
That's really cool. And I think it reminds me, when we first connected, I think you brought up that you were like hoping you could find someone to sell for you. And I think
that's right.
I basically talked to you and kind of convinced you on how it's important for you to learn first, so that if and when you want to do that, you can really manage them well and understand if they're performing or not. And so I'm just curious, now that we're a couple months into the relationship, was that like a big idea to wrap your head around? Like, did it take a lot of convincing for you to see my point, or how much anxiety or nervousness or faith did you have to put into making that decision?
To be honest, Harry, I understood exactly what you were saying. I just didn't want to do it, right? Because you got a family, you got, I work a full-time job. You're juggling a lot of plates. Most artists are not doing this full time. And so the time that you take away from that studio is very precious. So it's like, he's right. I got to do it. So if I'm going to do it, I'm going to be diligent and really make that time count. So that was my hesitation. It's like, because I know where that time's coming from. It's not coming from my family. It's got to come out of that studio time.
Yeah.
Right. So that was my hesitation on that.
And now, like, looking back on it in hindsight, does it feel like you were kind of making it into a bigger thing than it was at the time? Like, it's not as much rocket science, or are you kind of happy that you decided to bone up on these skills a little bit as a part of this?
Yeah. I think one of the things that I give you credit for is that it's very straightforward and to the point. And it doesn't take a ton of time, right? It doesn't take a ton of time to learn where the time, and what I appreciate about it is it doesn't take a ton of time to learn. And then as soon as you learn it, the real important thing is put it into practice.
Just do it.
Don't wait. Don't muddle. Don't try to get all, get into the theory too much and get theoretical and bounce around all these. No. Okay, if you understand it, the way to show that you understand it is to put it into practice. And the quicker you do that, the quicker you'll become more effective.
Yep.
So that's what I like about it is let's put it into practice. Hey, you make mistakes, lean into those mistakes. Those are ways of learning. And hey, just come to the group, get feedback, and try again.
Yeah, man, it's so interesting to hear you say this, because I feel like there's so many artists like yourself out there that have been in it for a while. They have a good career. They've been in galleries, but they've been so conditioned to think that they can't be the one that sells their own artwork. Like they have such a limiting belief around that. So I think it's so powerful to you to share your kind of message and what you're sharing right now, and how you were able to like get around that and work through that and see the fruits of making that decision, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's real important. Because I used to do that, but this was before social media, right? And I used to do that, but in person. So I think the added challenge now is, and I think most successful mid-career artists know how to talk to their clients in person. That's something that...
It's that techie element that's new.
Yeah, it's that gap. It's that tech, this screen in between me and that other person. And it's those people that sort of like, oh, I have these people all these likes. What do I do with them? Like, we don't know how to bridge that gap and make it as comfortable as if we're in a gallery having those conversations. Yeah. And I think that's a huge barrier to a lot of artists being successful online, is not knowing how to do that.
Yep. And I think for the artists that are listening, it's like, if you know how to do it, it's not as scary as you might think. It's just something that's new. It's just unfamiliar. Yeah. It's an unknown territory.
Yeah, it's just learning it's
the nuances.
Yeah, it's learning the nuances and how to subtly change the way you do things online versus in person.
Yep.
I think there's just some very distinct things that you have to learn how to do online that if you don't consider it, if someone like Harry's not pointing it out to you, you won't notice it, and you'll be failing.
No results. It'll just be binary.
You'll get no results. Yeah, and it's you don't really know why, and because you haven't really sat down to really analyze it, you'll just continue to have those same results. Just continue to spin your wheels.
Yep. Well, let's shift gears for a second. Like, so just overall
Sure.
so far, like, do you feel like you've gotten a return on your investment to date?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Because I remember when we talked, I was like, well, if I'm gonna reinvest in myself and spend this money, like I need to know if that's going to work. And you were very good in saying, well, you know what, let's work together, and we can always revisit, how you're doing down the road. And you were very accommodating in helping me sort of feel that I had someone that's willing to work with me and understood that, hey, there is going to be that little bit of an anxiety there. Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, like 9,000 in sales is not too bad for the first 2 months.
Hey, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I want to try to just get more consistent, but yeah, that's great.
Yeah, exactly. It's like now that we've had a couple of good months under the belt, it's like exactly consistency is the next step. And once you get that consistency, we can keep going from there. So let's go back to our initial conversation when we got connected. Try to remember back, like, why did you decide to do business with me?
Well, you'll remember this. We had initially talked, and then I emailed you and said, well, give me some of your other, clients that you've worked with, other artists, other folks that you've worked with. And immediately you sent me a whole bunch of videos, like, okay, check this out, check it out. And I can tell you, I went through all of those videos. I went through all of them. I watched them all. I was like, okay, let me hear what they're saying about their experience. Let me hear some of the things that they're learning. And, and so those references really helped me a lot, because when we initially talked, I understood what you're saying. I was interested, but I had no context, right? I had no context for what it is that you were saying. So hearing from other folks, hearing those conversations, hearing the nuances in the conversations that you were having helped give me context to what this program was. So that was I would say, the biggest thing.
Interesting. And was there any like interview in particular that jumped out at you, or like was it the artist interviews, or more just the fact that it was just the interviews in general? Like some of my past clients that were more business owners, were they also impactful?
They were all impactful. But what I look for is, for me, when you're working with someone, I look for the strength of the relationship. The numbers and all that kind of stuff, assuming that both people on either side are genuine and doing the correct thing, I assume that there's going to be a return at some point. But what will undermine that is if the relationship between those two individuals is not there. So when I looked at those videos, I was looking at it from that standpoint. Of course, the artist one was of particular interest because same community, but the other business ones was more about, okay, is this relationship reciprocal, and is that relationship being reciprocated back and forth, and can I see that both parties are committed? If I don't see that, then I know something's not right there. So to me, when you enter into a relationship, especially in business, like, it has to be reciprocal. And if it's not, that's a sign that something is not healthy there. So that was just where I was coming from.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. I think, knock on wood, I've been fortunate enough to work with a lot of clients so far that are easy to help and easy to work with, and vice versa. Yeah. So I think it shows up in the interviews that we mutually enjoy each other's company and the process of working together and getting the results, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah, definitely showed.
Was there anything in particular that like kicked you over the fence? Let's say like at the 1 yard line, so to speak.
I was pretty much a go after the interviews. It was more now, okay, I believe that there's genuinely good things happening. I believe that there's a connection between you and your clients. It sounds like what's being taught has really helped folks. The only thing was, okay, now how am I going to budget it out so that because I don't like to have debt. I don't like debt. So I'm not the type of guy who would just put it on a credit card. And no, the way I run my art business is the art and my sales have to generate the amount of money that I can reinvest. And so it's just a matter of, I talked to you about it. It was just a matter of figuring out how to do that. And yeah, I was pretty much 95% the way there, chatted with my wife, talked to her about it. That was kind of the last step. And when she was like, yeah, it seems great, then I was like, okay, let's do it.
That's awesome. That's got to be great to have, a spouse that's supportive and allowing you to take those investments and grow your art practice. Cause a lot of people who aren't entrepreneurs, they don't really get that mindset of like investing in yourself, Yeah. So that's awesome. She's fantastic. Yeah. I can't. Yeah. My wife she's so great. She's so great in terms of like supporting me and stuff like that and being really encouraging and stuff. So yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome.
So yeah, I always I consider her a part of things. So I always say, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? What do you think? Give me your perspective. I really value her opinion. So,
That's awesome. Nice. Well, let me ask you this. Would you recommend others work with me?
I would recommend it because it's those fundamental principles that I was talking about earlier that if you learn these things, you just in my mind I was as you said it, I'm thinking like if someone teaches you how to fish, you'll always know how to fish. And so that's how I feel like I'm learning how to fish, and I'm kind of going up like, okay, so I'm now starting with I'm starting with bass, I'm starting with trout, but eventually I'm going to get to bigger game.
Marlin.
You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm going to get to bigger game as I go up. But the principles of fishing is the same, right? Yep. Maybe the bait and the equipment and all this other stuff, that's different, but you still really have to know the basic principles. And that's what I would say is, as artists, we really are not taught or focused on learning those skills of like basic marketing principles and skills.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's what I'm really excited about is growing my skills that I have. And that's why I would say artists should work with you on really, if you learn that, man, I've learned that. Yeah, that's a game changer.
Yeah. It's funny. Like I love the way you said that, because part of me sometimes thinks about like some of the early stage lead gen techniques that I teach. I almost think of them as like into the world or like apocalypse lead generation, meaning like if everything else went away, like if your social media went away or like ads went away, or, if you had a blog and that went away, it's like you could still go get business and make sales, because this is so fundamental and it's so basic. It's about like, how do you build relationships with people systematically and quickly to build that trust,
Mm-hmm. I mean, even if I'm getting to the point now, even if like social media went away, if I have emails, if I got emails, I can make it happen. You know what I mean? I can make it happen. Like I actually really believe now, my website is there, but it's just there.
You don't even need the website now.
I haven't even used it. No, I haven't even used it. I haven't looked at my analytics on my website at all. Right?
I was just talking to another artist earlier today, 𝐂𝐥𝐢𝐞𝐳, and he was laughing about that too. It's like, I don't need the website. Why are we all so obsessed with it?
I literally do not need it. I would, at this moment, and I'll talk to you about this at another call. At this moment, I'm more thinking about, okay, well, maybe I can open up another social media after I get going with this one to really, I don't need a website. And if you would have talked to me 6 months ago, I would have been like, oh yeah, you gotta have a website. You gotta have it. I don't believe that anymore. I really don't believe that anymore. Now, if I talk
it's hard to believe that if you haven't seen firsthand, the stuff that we work on.
Yep. I was just gonna say, if I talk to some of my other, art colleagues and they won't believe me.
They won't believe you. They literally will not. They're like, you're lying.
They won't believe me. They will say, yeah, you're doing great on Instagram, but you're eventually going to need a website at some point. And I disagree with them. So
maybe at some point it's nice, but like it's much further away than you think. Like you can probably get to, I think, 30,000 a month in sales probably just off of your Instagram if you wanted to.
Yeah, like and here's the thing. If I'm doing 30,000 a month on Instagram in sales, why do I need to go to a platform on the internet that is unproven in sales? It's unproven.
There you go.
Right? So that's how I think now. Why wouldn't I just say, okay, you know what? Why don't I open up another Instagram page or another social media platform and have those two spin off of each other? Why would I go outside that ecosystem to a static website?
Sure.
To like that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that off interview. We can
yeah, we'll
yeah. We can brainstorm about that.
Have some questions about that.
So back to this. So we were talking about if you'd recommend me. Who do you think in particular we're a good fit for?
I think one of the things you have to be in order to work with you is you have to be motivated and self-disciplined as an artist. Like this is not going to work for you if you're not serious. You got to be serious. And if you're serious and you're motivated, then I think this is for you. It doesn't matter whether you're starting off or you're mid-career like myself, but I think there does need to be a baseline of, okay, I'm self-disciplined, I'm motivated, I'm willing to actually devote a certain amount of time to actually learning these skills and principles. I think if you're at that point in your art practice, then I would say this is good for you.
No, I think that's really, really true. And I think the way I would say it, it's like you have to be psychologically committed, right? It's almost like it's a difference between wanting something and making a decision. Like a lot of people want to be successful. Other people decide, I am going to be an artist, right?
Yes.
And then when you make that decision psychologically, that's like going to signal this commitment to yourself. And then at that point, it doesn't matter if you're part-time, full-time, starting out, mid-career, you're just going to keep putting one foot in front of the other, keep working with me, and you're going to see results. So it's really about that like psychological mindset, I think, in my perspective. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, it does. And I would say to artists, like, it's almost like, when you go to the canvas, you go to that piece of paper, chances are you're not going to finish that piece today. You're going to lay down, your working drawing. You're going to do that. That takes a couple hours, maybe 4 hours. You're going to come back tomorrow, put a base down. Like there's stages. But to start, you have to decide, this is what I'm doing.
This is going to be, I'm going to make this piece.
I'm going to make this piece. And I know that I'm not going to finish it today. It may take me a month, right? But I'm going to keep chipping away at it.
That's the exact same attitude.
3 hours, 5 hours, same attitude. 3 hours, 5 hours, 2 hours. I'm just going to continue to chip away at it. But every time I come to do it, I'm going to take it seriously. I'm going to turn off all the outside distractions, and I'm actually going to focus on doing it. And I think if you're at that point, and most artists, they understand that intrinsically because most artists don't, complete a finished piece in like 2 hours. They realize that this is a long, lonely process to make this painting. I've got to devote a lot of time to it. And this is the same thing. It's you got to chip away at it. You got to work on your skills. You got to hone your skills. You're not going to create a masterpiece the first time out. It takes practice.
Yeah.
Right. And this is the same thing. So I kind of view these things, once you get past the initial trepidation of it, I view them very similar to like an art practice. Like these are just skills that we need to learn.
Yeah. No, dude, that is such a good metaphor. And I think, I don't know if you've seen it yet, but I think as you get more mature in your business career, you're going to just start to see more and more about how like the whole building the business around the art, that is artistic in itself. Like that's a craft, that's a creative thing.
Yep.
And you look at it like you're building this masterpiece. It's just one piece of art that you're working on for a month, 6 months, 12 months. And you just keep kind of adding to it like a pearl, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you keep building out that painting, right? You keep adding layers. That's how I look at it. I keep adding layers of graphite, keep building it out, right? Work different areas, work them all up, right? They all got to kind of fit together. So that's how I kind of see it in my mind is where I'm at with you is I've just started a really good foundation. I got a nice foundation going. I want to round out the foundation before I kind of go into the second stage of the piece.
Cool. Well, why should someone who's listening take action right now?
The reason why you need to take action right now is because if you don't, the likelihood of you remaining stagnant in this area of your business is extremely high. It's extremely high. This was a sort of a sticking point with me for about 6 months, right? And had I not taken action, I'd still be there, right? I'd still be there trying to figure out what to do. And taking action gives you the opportunity to actually learn and move towards results. Even if I took action and I didn't go with you, I went with someone else, at least I'm going to fail quicker. You know what I mean? That's how I look at it. At least I'm going to learn whatever I need to learn over there quicker versus just kind of being in the sort of the valley of decision as to what to do. Yeah. So to me, not taking action means that you're further away from actually getting a solution to the problem. And every day you don't take action is another day that you've missed the opportunity to move towards a solution. And again, it's like, if you walk by that empty canvas and you don't put anything on it, that's another day that canvas is blank. And you're no closer to actually that finished piece if you continue to not put anything on there. Yep. So make a decision, put something on there, and then now at least you're on a path to growth. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. It's like, I think most artists, when they're trying to decide if to act or not, it's a lot about just like, it's whatever they're doing right now, the current course of action, the status quo, it's comfortable or comforting. And you can just get in this like rut where you're just doing things and you just assume like this is the way things have to be. And you don't realize that if you just make a decision, you could literally in a month's time make more progress than you'd make in 12 months on your own, just struggling and trying to get gas and things like that. And so I think you're right. Like, so just take more action, get momentum, and then at least you can see if something didn't work, iterate on it, and move in another direction if you need to.
Move in another direction. The other thing is that it's so interesting. I don't know if you feel this way, Harry, but this is so interesting that artists do a lot of things in community. Usually artists are always in community with one another. It's interesting to me that in this area, we're solo.
Yeah?
We're solo. Yeah. Like as far as like marketing and all that kind of stuff, we don't, as artists, we don't talk about this.
You don't trade notes?
No, we don't. No, we don't. We are far more likely to trade notes on our craft. And, we do that all the time. And we're in community about that.
Why do you think that is? Is it because everyone has a scarcity mindset? They're so nervous about thinking there's not enough collectors to go around?
That's a good question. I don't think it's that. I think it's just that we just don't understand how important it is. Because I think we've abdicated that for so long, and it's kind of just the industry standard that we don't think of taking ownership over that.
Yeah.
And so
it's like that idea of the unknown unknown. It's like so far out of the universe of discussion that it just doesn't even come up.
It just doesn't come up. And so what I'm saying is it's really interesting that there's a ton of community with other stuff with artists. But when it comes to this, hey, how can we take ownership over our own careers and how can we do this for ourselves? There's not a lot of conversation about that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the weird part about it. In working with you, that's a big part of what you get. A big part of what you get is, you get that community that seems it's very familiar to you on the art side, but you get it on this side.
But what everyone's talking about is marketing and sales.
Exactly. But they're all artists too, right? Yeah. They're artists. So we can do both.
That's cool.
Which typically doesn't happen like, when you go out into the art world, that typically doesn't happen.
Yeah, I love it. And I think some people, when they first get into that community, they're a little hesitant. They're like, I don't want to share like my little secret, or like, I don't want to, lose out on this thing that I just discovered for myself. But I think as you guys wade in and you get more into that community with the other artists, I think y'all are all seeing how, like, if one of you gets better, it makes all of you better. If one of you gets stronger, if one of you has more wins, it makes the other people more likely to make sales. And it's like, it's this totally different mindset shift than what you see in a lot of, like, kind of the more gatekeeper, kind of zero-sum dynamics of the traditional art world, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, what we're really doing as a group is we're growing the pie together. That's what it is. When you see another artist winning, they're growing the pie. Because if they're winning, then that means the pie is the pie is bigger. So I don't see, and I'm the type of artist to say from the beginning, and there's a ton of collectors
so much business.
A ton of business out there. There's no way we could go another 100 years and we're not even going to trip over each other as far as sharing collectors. It's no way. I'm off over here, you're off over here. But what is really encouraging is when you see another artist growing their pie, that helps you to understand that it can be done. Right? That this individual, they've taken control of their marketing on their own and they're doing it. And if they can do it,
I can do it.
then not only I can do it, but what's important is, hey, I can, I can just shoot him a message and talk to him. You know what I mean? Ask him, what were these things that you did? Or in the group, he can share. And I'm like, okay, that's much more tangible and much more real when you actually hear people explaining it, or when people share a win, and then what I like about that is people share a win, and then you say, hey, you know what? That's great. But you know what you could do next time? You could do this. And it's like, oh, I could do this. So you could even bump it up some more. Yeah. It's like, okay. So that's what I like too. It's like, okay, yeah, he did, he sold that $1,000 piece of artwork, but now here he's telling them, well, here's what you could do. Maybe next time you could sell that same piece for this. Yeah. Or the next time you get with that client, this is what you want to do. So those are the kinds of things that begin to propel you forward, because you're starting to see how you can create that momentum and move from one win and one good thing to the next. Yeah.
And it trains you to not settle. It trains you to always think about, how can I just get a little bit better, tweak that. And that's really key. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, this has been so fun, hearing everything that you've shared. Let me ask you this, what's your number one piece of advice for artists?
My number one piece of advice for artists would be to understand that social media has dynamically transformed the art market in ways that you have yet to understand.
And you're barely scratching the surface on, it's just nuts.
Yes. I mean, I'm going to say this is going to sound crazy, but if you don't want to be in a gallery, you don't need to be. You don't need the galleries. And I'm in galleries. I love my gallery relationships. I'm not saying that part of our ecosystem needs to be blown up. It's needed and it's going to be there. What I'm saying is your ability as an artist to connect personally with your collectors and develop your relationship with your collectors now it is so easy and it's so profitable. Why wouldn't you do that? I don't understand why you wouldn't do it. I don't understand why you wouldn't do it. And so that, to me, that's the number one thing I would say is your ability to create a business from your art based on social media connection directly with potential collectors has never been greater than it is today. It's never been greater. And it's going to get better over time. There's technology that is, we don't have to talk about it here, but there's technology that's going to make it even better. So build that infrastructure and that understanding of marketing now, and it's going to pay dividends. It's going to pay tremendous dividends in the future. I can't stress that enough.
What a great message to share. I think that's really, really good advice. That's awesome. So, Michael, like, what's on deck for you looking ahead, next 30 days, 90 days? What are your plans for yourself?
Yeah. So here, what's on deck is, like I said, even tomorrow, I've got a couple of studio, Zoom studio tours lined up. So hopefully we get that going. So that's the short term. We're going to have that. Sort of in the next months is, my goal is to try to make that connection and that customer experience even stronger, both in me being able to connect with them and right the way through the entire relationship, right from day one to the day that they get their that special piece of artwork delivered to their door. I want to continue to improve that connection and that relationship. That's one. Two is the consistency of sales, is being able to say, okay, let's pick this target and let's see if we can hit that target every month over the next, quarter or over the next 3 months. And then we'll revisit that and then go the next 3 months. So that's kind of where my mind is at right now. And I know you and I are going to be talking about some things. I've already put some ideas forward of how I'm thinking of doing this stuff. So yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to.
Those are great action items ahead. Can I make a suggestion on the last one on the target?
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you feel about 10,000 a month?
Well, originally when I came in, if you remember when we started, I said that was my ultimate goal. I didn't think I was going to get to that point so quick because, now in the last couple of months, it's been 9,000 in 2 months. So that's got to be it. That's the goal. I was thinking 5, and I pretty much almost got there in 2 months. So yeah, getting to the level of 10,000 a month, that's a great goal.
Yeah, and it's no pressure on my end. It's just, I think if you want to do it, it's right in front of you. You just have to walk the path, basically. You just have to do the work next month.
To me, I think it's just a matter of consistency. And for me, creating the work is not the hard part. I think creating the work, it comes. It's now getting that consistency in terms of my skills to a place where I really feel super confident that I'm able to go out and fish and fish successfully every month.
And also, if you've sold some pieces for 3,000, which is, you have, if we just sell 3 of those in a month, that's 9. And so we're almost there with that.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. Is like, if I can do, 2 pieces a month, and each of those pieces are, between 4,000 and 6,000, I'm right there.
Yep.
Right. So now it's about, taking those pieces that have sold for that amount and taking those ideas and that energy and coming up with new pieces for next month, which I've already planned, right? We're already working on that and continuing to build that momentum.
Cool. Well, Michael, this has been awesome. I'm going to let you run. I look forward to doing another one of these with you in a couple of months. We'll check back in.
That'd be great. Yeah. Thanks, Harry. Appreciate it.
Bye.